The church doors opened, and I heard the wedding march begin. But instead of me walking down that aisle in my custom Verawang dress, it was my sister Camilla. She was wearing MY dress, holding MY bouquet, walking toward MY fiancé Brandon, who stood at the altar smiling like this was all perfectly normal. The guests turned in their seats, confused. Some pulled out their phones, thinking they were documenting a beautiful moment. Others whispered, wondering where I was. My own mother sat in the front row, tissue to her eyes, apparently in on this whole thing. My name is Marlochan Martinez, and I need to tell you about the day I didn't walk down the aisle at my own wedding because I was standing in the back of the church, wearing a server's uniform, holding a tray of champagne, watching my sister try to steal my entire life. But here's what Camilla didn't know. I'd known about her plan for 6 weeks. Every detail, every lie, every manipulated family member. She thought I was locked in a psychiatric hold she'd orchestrated, drugged and restrained, missing my own wedding. She thought she'd won the game she'd been playing since we were children. The wedding coordinator whispered frantically into her headset, looking for me. The photographer kept shooting, capturing Camilla's triumphant smile as she reached Brandon at the altar. Father Miguel looked deeply uncomfortable but continued with the ceremony because my mother had told him I'd had a mental breakdown and Camilla was standing in to save the family from embarrassment. Brandon took Camilla's hands. Actually, I took them. Looked into her eyes with the same expression he'd given me when he proposed. And that's when I knew he wasn't just going along with this. He was part of it. I set down my tray and pulled out my phone. The video I was about to play on the church's projection system would destroy them both. But first, I wanted to watch them think they'd won. I wanted to see their faces at the exact moment they realized I'd been playing a longer game. Father Miguel asked if anyone objected to this union. The church was silent. That's when I hit play. The massive screen behind the altar, installed for modern weddings to project photos of the couple, lit up with security footage from my apartment. There was Camilla, letting herself in with a stolen key. There she was, drugging my wine. There was Brandon, helping carry my unconscious body to a car. And there was the audio, crystal clear, of them discussing how they'd have me committed, steal my wedding, my fiancé, my inheritance from our grandmother. Once Marlowe's declared mentally incompetent, Camilla's voice echoed through the church speakers, "Everything goes to me as next of kin. The trust fund, the properties, even her company shares. And then we can finally be together without her shadow over us." I stepped out of the shadows at the back of the church, no longer in server's clothes, but in a simple black dress. "Hello, everyone," I said into the wireless mic I'd hidden earlier. "Sorry I'm late to my own wedding." I was unavoidably detained by my sister in a psychiatric facility, where she had me involuntarily committed after drugging me. The gasps were beautiful. The FBI agents entering from the side doors were even better. 6 months before that disaster of a wedding, I was running my own biotech startup in San Diego, developing innovative drug delivery systems. At 29, I'd already secured 2 patents and $12 million in Series B funding. The lab was my second home, sometimes my first home when experiments ran late. My office overlooked the Torrey Pines cliffs, all glass and clean lines. I'd earned that view, working 100-hour weeks through my PhD at UCSD, then gambling everything on my own company instead of taking the safe position at Pfizer. My team respected me not because I was the boss, but because I could run every piece of equipment in our lab, troubleshoot every protocol, and solve problems they hadn't even identified yet. Camilla was 2 years older, the family golden child despite having accomplished less. She was beautiful in that effortless way, our Chinese mother's delicate features mixed with our Mexican father's warm coloring. She'd modeled through college, married a tech millionaire at 23, divorced him at 26 with a generous settlement. Never had to work a real day in her life. I was the opposite. Inherited our father's sturdy build and our mother's stubborn streak. Where Camilla charmed, I worked. Where she manipulated, I earned. But she had one advantage: our parents loved her more. It wasn't even subtle. Her photos covered their Rancho Santa Fe mansion. Mine were relegated to the home office. Brandon and I met at a biotech conference in Boston. He was presenting on venture capital trends in life sciences. I was presenting on our novel polymer-based drug delivery system. He found me at the networking reception and said my talk was the only one worth attending. Smooth, but seemed genuine. He was everything I thought I wanted: successful, ambitious, understood my world. He ran a venture fund focused on biotech and could actually follow when I talked about work. 6 months of long-distance dating, then he moved to San Diego, said he could run his fund from anywhere and wanted to be where I was. The proposal came a year later at sunset on Windansea Beach. Private, simple, perfect. The ring was modest by La Jolla standards. He knew I worked with my hands, needed something practical. We planned a small wedding, just family and close friends. I didn't need a spectacle, but Camilla did. She'd always competed with me, but it got worse after her divorce. I had the career she'd never built. The relationship lasted more than 3 years. The respect she'd never earned. When I announced my engagement, she smiled and hugged me, but her eyes were calculating. Our grandmother had died 3 years earlier, leaving her entire estate in a trust. Camilla and I were co-beneficiaries, but with a catch: the funds would only be released when we both turned 35, or if one of us was deemed mentally incompetent, in which case the other would control everything. $20 million in real estate and securities. Enough to matter, even to Camilla with her divorce settlement. I never thought about that clause. Never imagined my own sister would weaponize it. The first sign something was wrong came 4 months before the wedding. I'd been having dizzy spells, confusion, memory gaps. Thought it was stress from wedding planning and running the company. Brandon suggested I see a doctor. The doctor found traces of benzodiazepines in my blood, drugs I'd never taken. But the levels were low, inconsistent. The doctor thought maybe I'd forgotten to take something for anxiety. Brandon was so concerned, so supportive. Started staying over more to take care of me. I started handling things I normally managed myself: bills, schedules, even some wedding planning. Camilla was suddenly around more too. Visiting for sister time, helping with wedding prep, bringing me tea and supplements she swore would help with the stress. I was touched. Finally, at 31, we were acting like real sisters. I was an idiot. But when you're being slowly poisoned by the people you trust most, your brain doesn't work right. That's the point. If you're listening to this thinking you'd have figured it out sooner, maybe you would have. But small doses of benzos over time don't make you obviously drugged, they make you slightly off, slightly vulnerable, slightly dependent on the people drugging you. It's medically brilliant, actually. I'd admire it if it hadn't been done to me. The real escalation started 2 months before the wedding. I woke up in the ER with no memory of how I got there. Brandon was beside my bed, holding my hand, tears in his eyes. Camilla was there too, talking to a doctor in hushed tones. Apparently, I'd had a psychotic break at my bachelorette party. Screaming about conspiracies, attacking Camilla, threatening to kill myself. Except I remembered none of it. The last thing I remembered was having champagne at the spa where we'd started the night. The doctor, a psychiatrist named Dr. Reeves, recommended a 72-hour hold for observation. Brandon agreed immediately. Camilla said it was for the best. I was too confused to fight, too dizzy to stand. The benzos in my system, combined with whatever else they'd given me that night, made me compliant. Those 3 days in the psychiatric ward were hell. Not because of the place itself, the staff were kind, professional. But because I knew something was wrong and couldn't articulate it. Every time I tried to explain that I'd been drugged, that this wasn't me, they'd note paranoid delusions in my chart. Brandon visited every day, bringing flowers, looking heartbroken. He told the staff I'd been under tremendous stress, that he'd noticed personality changes. Camilla backed him up, told them about my supposed anxiety, my control issues, my family history of mental illness, a complete lie, but who would they believe? They released me with a prescription for antipsychotics I didn't need and a recommendation for ongoing therapy. The wedding was 6 weeks away. I should have called it off, should have run, but the drugs made me foggy, compliant. Brandon moved in full-time to take care of me. Camilla had a key and came by daily to help. 3 weeks before the wedding, I found the first real evidence. A text on Brandon's phone he'd left unlocked, Camilla saying, the papers are ready. Dr. Reeves will sign off after the next incident. The next incident. They were planning another one. That's when the fog lifted, replaced by rage so pure it burned through the medication haze. I stopped taking the antipsychotics immediately but pretended to continue. Started documenting everything, taking photos of the pills Camilla brought, recording conversations, installing hidden cameras in my apartment. What I discovered over the next week made me sick. Brandon and Camilla had been having an affair for 8 months. Since right after our engagement. The entire relationship with me had been a setup: get close, get engaged, get access to my life, then take it all. They'd researched involuntary commitment laws, found Dr. Reeves who could be bought, planned every detail. The trust fund was just the beginning. My company had been valued at $40 million in our last funding round. As my husband, if I was incapacitated, Brandon would control my shares. Camilla would control the family trust. Together, they'd have everything I'd built. But the cruelest part was the wedding itself. They planned to have me committed the night before, then Camilla would take my place, claiming I'd had a breakdown and she was standing in to save the family's reputation. They'd literally steal my wedding, my dress, my life, while I was drugged in a psychiatric ward. I found the commitment papers in Brandon's briefcase. Already filled out, just waiting for Dr. Reeves' signature. The diagnosis: schizoaffective disorder with paranoid delusions. The recommendation: long-term inpatient treatment. The facility: a private psychiatric hospital in Arizona where I'd disappear for months, maybe years. That's when I started my own planning. 2 weeks before the wedding, I played the perfect victim. Took my fake medication in front of them, acted confused and compliant, let them think their plan was working. Meanwhile, I was building my case with the help of someone unexpected, my lab assistant, Jerome. Jerome had noticed my personality changes at work, but unlike everyone else, he didn't buy the stress explanation. He'd run unauthorized tests on my blood samples from the lab. We had them for an experiment on drug metabolism. Found the benzo metabolites, but also something else: Rohypnol, the date rape drug. They'd been giving me Rohypnol at specific times to cause the dramatic incidents. Jerome wanted to go to the police immediately, but I needed more. I needed them to commit crimes that couldn't be explained away. So we set up a sting operation using my apartment's security system and some creative chemistry. I replaced my pills with placebos that looked identical. The wine Camilla kept bringing? I poured it out and replaced it with grape juice. The supplements? Switched with vitamins. But I acted increasingly unstable, giving them the performance they expected. 1 week before the wedding, they made their move. I pretended to be passed out on my couch after drinking the drugged wine. Brandon and Camilla let themselves in, thinking I was unconscious. Their conversation, captured in perfect HD with audio: Camilla, the final dose tomorrow night. Dr. Reeves will be waiting at the facility. Brandon, and you're sure the dress fits? Camilla, I tried it yesterday while she was at work. It's perfect. Like it was made for me. Brandon, in a way, everything she has was made for you. You're the one who deserved it all along. They kissed then, long and passionate, while I lay there pretending to be unconscious. Then Brandon did something that sealed his fate. He pulled out a syringe and injected something into my arm. Or tried to. Jerome had provided me with a subdermal shield, a thin polymer barrier that prevented the needle from actually penetrating. But Brandon didn't notice in the dim light. After they left, I collected the syringe he'd carelessly thrown in my trash. Ketamine. Enough to cause serious neurological symptoms. Enough to justify an emergency commitment. But here's where they made their fatal error. Brandon had used his hospital ID to get the ketamine. He served on the board of a local hospital and had access he shouldn't have used. Camilla had forged my signature on commitment papers. Both federal crimes. I took everything to the FBI. Not the local police who might minimize family drama, but the FBI who take medical fraud and involuntary imprisonment very seriously. Agent Sarah Mills looked at my evidence: the videos, the blood tests, the syringe with Brandon's fingerprints, and immediately opened a case. But I didn't want them arrested yet. I wanted them to think they'd won. I wanted them to commit their crime fully, publicly, irrevocably. So Agent Mills and I made a plan. They'd monitor the situation, let Brandon and Camilla execute their plan, then arrest them at the perfect moment. But first, I had to let them think they'd succeeded in committing me. The night before my wedding, I let them drug me for real. FBI agents were monitoring my vitals remotely. Let them carry me to the car, drive me to the psychiatric facility. Let Dr. Reeves admit me based on their lies. All recorded by the wire I was wearing. But here's what they didn't know. Agent Mills had already been to the facility. Dr. Reeves was under investigation for Medicare fraud. He'd agreed to cooperate in exchange for a reduced sentence. So while I was admitted on paper, I was actually in a safe room, fully conscious, watching everything on surveillance cameras. The wedding was set for 4 p.m. the next day. At noon, while Camilla was getting her hair done with MY bridesmaids, I walked out of the facility with FBI agents. We drove to the church, where I changed into server clothes and waited. Waited to watch my sister walk down the aisle in my dress. Waited to see Brandon's face as he committed the crime. Waited for the perfect moment to destroy them both. The moment the video played on the church screen, chaos erupted. Camilla stood frozen at the altar, her face white under the veil, my veil. Brandon dropped her hands and stepped back, looking around for an exit. But FBI agents were already at every door. My mother stood up, screaming. Not at Camilla, but at me. You're sick, Marlo. You need help. This is all in your head. I walked down the aisle toward them, the same aisle Camilla had just walked. Every step is deliberate, measured. The guests parted like I was Moses at the Red Sea. Mom, I said, loud enough for everyone to hear, did you know that Camilla has been drugging me for months? Did you know she and Brandon have been having an affair since right after our engagement? Or were you just willing to believe I was crazy because it's easier than admitting your favorite daughter is a criminal? My father, who'd been silent until then, stood up. His face was gray. Marlo, what is this? I pulled out my phone, connected it to the sound system. Played a recording from 3 days ago, Camilla on the phone with our mother, Camilla's voice. She's finally committed. Mom. The wedding can go forward. Mom's voice. Are you sure this is right, Mija? Camilla. She's sick. She needs help. And this way, the family isn't embarrassed by a canceled wedding. I'm doing this for everyone. Mom, and Brandon is okay with this? Camilla. Brandon loves me. He always has. Marlo was just in the way. The church was dead silent except for that recording. My mother sank back into the pew, covering her face. She'd known. Maybe not everything, but enough. Agent Mills stepped forward, badge visible. Camilla Chin Martinez and Brandon Walsh, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit kidnapping, medical fraud, wire fraud, and attempted involuntary imprisonment. Camilla tried to run in my wedding dress, the dress I'd spent 6 months designing, hand-beaded with our grandmother's pearls. She got 3 steps before Agent Mills tackled her. The dress tore, pearls scattering across the marble floor like drops of justice. Brandon didn't run. He turned to me, and his mask finally dropped. You were never supposed to be this smart, he said. You were supposed to be the weak one, the crazy one. Camilla promised you'd be easy to break. I smiled at him. I have a PhD in biochemistry. I run a biotech company. I hold patents for drug delivery systems. Did you really think I wouldn't notice I was being drugged? Dr. Reeves was arrested at his home an hour later. The psychiatric facility was shut down for investigation. 23 other patients were found to have been involuntarily committed under questionable circumstances. My case had exposed an entire criminal ring. But standing in that church, watching my sister and fiancé being arrested in front of everyone we knew, I didn't feel victorious. I felt empty. The 2 people I'd trusted most had conspired to destroy me. For money. For jealousy. For the sick satisfaction of taking what I'd earned. The wedding guests dispersed quickly, scandal following them out the doors. Within hours, the video would be all over social media. #WeddingGateSD would trend for a week. But I didn't care about that. I cared that my company's board would question my judgment. That investors would wonder if I was stable. That every future relationship would be shadowed by this betrayal. Jerome drove me home, not to the apartment where I'd been drugged, but to a hotel suite I'd booked as a backup plan. He'd brought my go bag, clothes, documents, the hard drives with all my evidence. "You saved my life," I told him. He shook his head. "You saved your own life. I just ran some tests." That night, alone in a hotel room that should have been my wedding suite, I finally cried. Not for Brandon, he'd never been real. Not for Camilla, she'd been my enemy disguised as my sister for years. I cried for the life I'd thought I had, the family I'd believed in, the future I'd planned. Then I stopped crying and started planning revenge. Real revenge. The kind that would hurt them worse than prison time. The criminal case would handle the legal justice, but I wanted more. I wanted them to lose everything they'd tried to steal from me, and then some. First, I went after the money. Camilla's divorce settlement had left her with $3 million. But her ex-husband Marco had suspected infidelity during their marriage, just couldn't prove it. I hired a forensic accountant and a private investigator to dig into her past. Turns out, Camilla had been cheating with Brandon even back then. They'd been on and off for years. The PI found hotel records, credit card charges, even photos from a trip to Cabo during her marriage. Under California law, Marco could challenge the divorce settlement based on hidden assets and fraud. I sent Marco everything. He filed for settlement modification within a week. Camilla would have to pay back half the settlement plus damages. But she'd already spent most of it on her lifestyle. She'd be bankrupt. Brandon's venture fund was more complex. He had limited partners, investors who'd trusted him with their money. They needed to know their fund manager was a criminal. I compiled a dossier, not just the arrest, but his history of financial manipulation, his abuse of hospital access for drugs, his ethical violations. I sent it to every LP, every portfolio company, every potential investor. Within 2 weeks, they'd all pulled out. The fund collapsed. Brandon's professional reputation was destroyed. The SEC opened an investigation into his financial practices. But the real revenge came through my parents. My father had always been neutral in the rivalry between Camilla and me. My mother had always chosen Camilla. But attempted murder, because that's what drugging someone repeatedly is, changed things. I showed my father everything. Not just the evidence from the FBI case, but years of documentation I'd kept. Every time Camilla had sabotaged me. Every lie she'd told about me. Every manipulation she'd used to make me look bad and herself look better. My favorite piece was from when I was 16. I'd won a full scholarship to MIT early admission. The acceptance letter had disappeared. Camilla had told our parents I was lying about getting in, that I was delusional even then. They'd believed her. I'd ended up at UCSD instead, still good, but not MIT. I'd found that acceptance letter in Camilla's things when we were clearing out our grandmother's house. She'd kept it like a trophy. I'd photographed it, but never confronted her. Now I showed our father. He looked at that letter for a long time. Then he said, "We failed you. We chose wrong." Every time. My mother took longer to accept the truth. Even with the evidence, even with the arrests, she wanted to believe Camilla had been manipulated by Brandon. But then the full toxicology report came back. I'd been drugged 47 times over 6 months. Once might be Brandon. 47 times was systematic torture. My parents disowned Camilla. Legal documents, public announcement, complete severing. They also sued her for emotional distress and fraud. Apparently she'd been stealing from them for years, small amounts they'd never noticed. But I wasn't done. The trial was set for 8 months after the arrest. Brandon and Camilla were out on bail. Brandon's family had money, and Camilla had manipulated some distant relatives into helping. They were both on house arrest with ankle monitors, but that didn't stop them from trying to salvage something. Camilla started a blog, Framed by My Sister, a story of mental illness and revenge. She claimed I'd orchestrated everything, that I was the one who'd been drugging myself for attention, that she'd only tried to help. She painted herself as a victim of my supposed genius-level manipulation. Some people believed her. The comments section was full of supporters who thought I was too perfect, too prepared, that real victims don't document everything so thoroughly. They didn't understand that when you're a scientist, documentation is instinct. Brandon took a different approach. He went on a podcast circuit, claiming our relationship had been consensual polyamory gone wrong. That I'd known about him and Camilla, had agreed to it, then changed my mind and decided to destroy them both. He was charming, convincing. Some people started questioning my story. The first setback came when Dr. Reeves died. Heart attack while under house arrest. Without his testimony, proving the conspiracy became harder. His records were a mess, deliberately obscured. The prosecution had to build the case without their star witness. The second setback was worse. Camilla's lawyer found a psychiatrist who testified that repeated benzodiazepine exposure could cause false memories, paranoid delusions, and confabulation. He suggested that I might genuinely believe things that hadn't happened, that the videos could be deepfakes I'd created in a delusional state. For a moment, it looked like they might create reasonable doubt. That's when Jerome came through again. He'd been analyzing the drugs they'd given me, creating a precise timeline of what I'd been exposed to and when. He proved that the specific combination couldn't cause the symptoms the defense psychiatrist claimed. More importantly, he found something in my blood that no one had tested for, a metabolite that only appears when rohypnol and ketamine are combined. It was like a chemical fingerprint of attempted murder. The prosecution also found other victims. 3 other women Brandon had dated before me, all with similar stories of confusion, memory loss, gradual escalation of control. None as severe as mine, but establishing a pattern. And Camilla? They found her diary from when we were teenagers. Pages and pages about how much she hated me, how unfair it was that I was smarter, how she'd make me pay someday. One entry, from when I got into MIT, actually detailed a plan remarkably similar to what she'd eventually done: make everyone think I was crazy, take everything I had. She'd been planning some version of this for 15 years. 2 weeks before the trial, I made my biggest move. I'd been rebuilding my company's reputation, securing new funding, launching our first product. But I'd also been building something else, a foundation for victims of medical fraud and involuntary commitment. I announced it at a press conference with 23 victims from Dr. Reeves' facility beside me. The Butterfly Foundation, because we were all trapped in cocoons of lies until we broke free. Funded with my own money initially, but designed to be sustainable through corporate partnerships. The key partnership was with my own company. We were developing a new drug detection system, something that could identify if someone had been given psychiatric medications without their knowledge. It would be available in hospitals, clinics, even as a home test kit. We called it Guardian. Brandon and Camilla watched from house arrest as I turned their crime into an innovation that would protect others. Every news article about the Guardian mentioned why it was created. Their names became synonymous with the crime they'd committed. But the real execution was more personal. I knew Camilla was broke, legal fees, frozen assets, the divorce settlement clawback. She was selling everything she owned, piece by piece. So I bought it all. Through shell companies, anonymous buyers, I purchased every single thing she sold. Her car, her jewelry, her furniture, even her clothes. I had it all delivered to a storage unit, then sent her the key with a note: everything you have came from what you stole from others. When you get out of prison, you can have it back. But you'll know that I own it all, just like you tried to own me. Brandon's destruction was different. His identity was tied to his professional success, his reputation in the venture capital world. So I systematically destroyed that world for him. I reached out to every company he'd ever invested in, offering them better terms through a new fund I was creating. Not my money, I'd partnered with 3 major VC firms who saw the opportunity. We bought out Brandon's positions at a premium, removing his name from every success story he'd ever been part of. Then I hired his former associates. The analysts who'd done the real work while he took credit. The associates he'd treated like servants. I gave them positions at my company or connected them with better firms. His entire professional network abandoned him for better opportunities one provided. The final touch was perfectionist. I bought his parents' house. They'd mortgaged it to pay for his bail and legal fees. When they couldn't make payments, I bought it through a trust. I didn't evict them. I'm not a monster. I let them live there rent-free. But they knew their home belonged to the woman their son tried to destroy. Every month, they had to write Marlo Chun Martinez Trust on their checks for utilities. A small reminder of what their golden boy had cost them. 3 days before the trial, Camilla tried to kill herself. Pills, of course. Benzodiazepines she'd hidden. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. She survived, barely, and was placed on psychiatric hold, a real one this time. The same papers she'd forged for me were now filed legitimately for her. Brandon tried to flee, cut off his ankle monitor, and ran for the Mexican border. Made it as far as Tijuana before the Mexican federal police arrested him. Fleeing made him look guilty, destroying any remaining credibility. His lawyer quit. He had to use a public defender. The trial began on a Monday morning in downtown San Diego. I wore the suit I'd worn to my first investor pitch, navy blue, conservative, powerful. Camilla was brought from the psychiatric ward in restraints. Brandon from federal custody in chains. They looked broken. Good. The prosecution laid out the case methodically. The drugging timeline, the conspiracy evidence, the financial motivation. Jerome testified about the chemical analysis. The FBI presented the surveillance footage. Each piece built on the last, creating an undeniable picture of premeditated attempted murder. When I took the stand, I didn't cry, didn't shake. I presented facts like I was giving a scientific presentation. This is what they did. This is how they did it. This is the evidence that proves it. The defense tried to shake me, suggested I was cold, calculating that normal victims show more emotion. I looked at the defense attorney and said, I'm a scientist. I process trauma through analysis and documentation. If that makes me abnormal, then I'm grateful for my abnormality. It saved my life. The jury loved that. Brandon testified in his own defense, against his lawyer's advice. Still charming, still trying to spin the narrative. But the prosecutor destroyed him with his own words. The recordings from my apartment, the emails to Camilla, the texts planning my commitment. The moment that sealed his fate was when he said, Marlo was always too ambitious for her own good. Someone needed to slow her down. The prosecutor pounced. So you decided to drug her? Imprison her? Steal her life? Brandon's mask finally, fully shattered. She had everything. The company, the money, the perfect life. Camilla deserved it more. Camilla was the one who should have been the success story. I was just evening the score. The courtroom gasped. He'd just confessed, not just to the crime, but to the motive, pure jealousy and entitlement. Camilla couldn't testify. Her psychiatric evaluation found her genuinely unstable now, the stress of being caught triggering a real breakdown. The irony was perfect. She'd tried to fake my mental illness and ended up actually mentally ill herself. Her diary was read aloud instead. Page after page of hatred, jealousy, detailed plans to destroy me going back to our childhood. The jury heard her own words describing how she'd seduce Brandon, how they'd drug me, how they'd take everything. One entry stood out. Marlo thinks she's so smart with her PhD and her company. But I'm smarter. I know how to use people's trust against them. And she trusts me because I'm family. That's her weakness. Family. The defense's closing argument was desperate. They claimed I'd orchestrated everything, that I was a genius-level manipulator who'd framed 2 innocent people. The problem with that argument? It required the jury to believe I drugged myself 47 times, created hundreds of pieces of false evidence, and somehow convinced the FBI to go along with it. The prosecution's closing was simple. They showed a photo of me from before the drugging, healthy, vibrant, successful. Then a photo from my involuntary commitment, gaunt, confused, barely recognizable. This is what they did to her, the prosecutor said. They tried to erase her. But she survived. She fought back. And now she's asking you for justice. The jury deliberated for 2 hours. Guilty on all counts. The sentencing was 2 weeks later. I gave a victim impact statement that I'd rehearsed 100 times. Brandon and Camilla didn't just try to steal my money or my company. They tried to steal my sanity. They tried to steal my identity. They tried to steal my future. They wanted me to disappear into a psychiatric facility while they lived my life. That's not just crime, it's evil. They're not sick. They're not victims. They're predators who choose their prey carefully and attack methodically. They deserve every consequence coming to them. Brandon got 25 years. The judge called him a sociopath who'd weaponized romance. He'll be 60 when he gets out, if he survives prison. His fellow inmates don't like men who drug women. Camilla got 15 years plus mandatory psychiatric treatment. She'll be 46 when she's released, her beauty gone, her youth wasted, everything she valued about herself rotted away in a cell. As they were led away, Camilla looked back at me. For a moment, I saw my sister, the one who'd taught me to ride a bike, who'd shared secrets at sleepovers, who'd been my maid of honor at the wedding that never happened. Then I remembered her walking down that aisle in my dress, and any sympathy evaporated. Outside the courthouse, reporters asked how I felt. I said, empty. But tomorrow I'll fill that emptiness with purpose. They tried to bury me, but they didn't know I'm a seed. That became a rallying cry for victims everywhere. T-shirts, hashtags, a movement. But I didn't care about fame. I cared about the 23-year-old girl who emailed me that night, saying her boyfriend was acting strange and she thought he might be drugging her. I helped her get tested, get safe, get justice. That's worth more than revenge. 6 months after the trial, my life looked nothing like I'd planned. The biotech company was thriving. Guardian had launched successfully, with orders from hospitals nationwide. The publicity from the trial had actually helped, positioning us as a company that understood the real-world implications of drug safety. But my personal life was in ruins. I couldn't date, couldn't trust anyone enough to let them close. I'd moved to a new apartment with security that bordered on paranoid. Biometric locks, cameras everywhere, a panic room. Jerome joked that I lived like a Bond villain. He wasn't wrong. My parents tried to rebuild our relationship. They came to Sunday dinners, invested in my company, and supported the foundation. But the damage was done. They'd chosen Camilla for 30 years. They couldn't undo that with apologies and investment checks. The wedding venue had offered to host a different event for free. They felt terrible about what had happened. I used it for the foundation's first gala. 300 guests in the same church where my sister had worn my dress. But this time, the guests were survivors, advocates, people who understood that trust could be weaponized. Brandon's family reached out once. His mother wrote a letter apologizing, saying she'd failed as a parent, asking if there was anything she could do. I wrote back, raise awareness. Tell other mothers that their charming sons might be predators. Teach them that victims aren't responsible for their victimizers' backgrounds. She started a blog about recognizing signs of antisocial behavior in children. It was painful, honest, and valuable. We never spoke directly, but I respected her for facing the truth about her son. Camilla sent letters from prison. I had them forwarded to my lawyer unread. He summarized them, manipulation disguised as apology. She was still trying to control the narrative, still claiming she was a victim of circumstances. Classic Camilla. The real aftermath was medical. Despite stopping the drugs, my brain had been affected. I had tremors sometimes, memory glitches, moments of confusion. The neurologist said it might be permanent, the price of surviving sustained poisoning. I was suing Brandon and Camilla civilly for medical costs and damages. They'd have nothing when they got out of prison. My company developed a new protocol for employees who might be experiencing domestic drugging. Free testing, paid leave, legal support. 3 employees used it in the first year. All 3 were being drugged by partners. The Guardians saved their lives. The foundation grew beyond my expectations. Corporate sponsors, government grants, celebrity endorsements. We opened clinics that specialized in detecting and treating covert poisoning. We lobbied for legislation making it easier to test for drugs in suspected cases. We created a database of doctors like Dr. Reeves who'd been involved in involuntary commitments. But the best moment came a year after the trial. A young woman named Diana came to my office. She was 22, a chemistry student at UCSD. Her sister had been trying to have her committed, claiming mental illness, trying to steal her inheritance. Diana had seen my story, recognized the pattern, and gotten tested. She was being drugged. We helped her document everything, get safe, press charges. Her sister was arrested within a week. At the trial, Diana testified with the same calm precision I'd shown. Her sister was convicted, sentenced to 10 years. Afterward, Diana said, "You saved my life." I shook my head. "You saved your own life. I just showed you it was possible." 3 years have passed since my wedding. 3 years since I watched my sister walk down the aisle in my dress toward my fiancé. 3 years since I played that video and destroyed them both. The company is worth $200 million now. We're developing new detection methods for date rape drugs, psychiatric medications used without consent, even poisons. Every product we create is named after a survivor. The Diana test. The Monica protocol. The Marlowe method. I finally started dating again. His name is David, another scientist, someone who understands that trust is earned through consistent action over time. We joke that our relationship is the most documented in history. I screenshot everything, save everything, verify everything. He doesn't mind. He says anyone who loves a survivor needs to understand that trust has been weaponized against them. We're getting married next month. Small ceremony, just 20 people, all thoroughly background checked. No church, we're doing it at the Foundation's clinic, surrounded by people who understand that love shouldn't require losing yourself. I'm wearing a simple dress I bought off the rack. No custom Vera Wang, no hand-beaded pearls, no 18-foot train. Camilla destroyed my dream wedding, but she also freed me from caring about those things. The wedding isn't the marriage. The dress isn't the commitment. My parents will be there, older now, humbled by their failures. My father walks with a cane, the stress of everything aged him rapidly. My mother no longer mentions Camilla, has removed all her photos, and pretends she only had one daughter. It's sad, but it's also what Camilla wanted to erase me. Instead, she erased herself. Brandon was killed in prison last year, attacked by an inmate whose daughter had been drugged and assaulted in college. The guards took their time responding. He died on the way to the hospital. I didn't celebrate, but I didn't mourn either. The world is safer without him. Camilla is still alive, still in psychiatric treatment, still in prison. She's diagnosed with narcissistic personality disorder and borderline personality disorder, real diagnoses this time. The psychiatrist says she'll never fully understand what she did wrong, that her brain can't process empathy normally. She's broken in ways that can't be fixed. Sometimes I dream about that day in the church. But in my dreams, I don't stop them. I let Camilla marry Brandon, let them think they've won. Then I watch as they slowly realize that winning me was never the prize, it was a prison of their own making. They'd have to pretend to be me forever, knowing the real me was out there, waiting. But that's just a dream. In reality, I chose immediate justice over long revenge. I chose exposure over endurance. I chose to save myself rather than sacrifice myself for the perfect revenge. The Foundation has saved 347 people from similar situations. That's 347 people who didn't have to go through what I did, or worse. That's the real revenge, turning their attempt to destroy me into something that saves others. If you're listening to this because someone you trust is hurting you, because you feel crazy but can't explain why, because your reality doesn't match what others are telling you, get tested. Document everything. Trust your instincts. And know that surviving isn't about being strong or smart or special. It's about refusing to let them write your ending. My name is Marlo Chin Martinez. I'm a scientist, a CEO, a survivor, and soon a wife to someone who actually loves me. My sister tried to steal my life by walking down the aisle in my wedding dress. She's in prison. I'm free. That's the only measurement that matters. The dress? I kept it. Had it cleaned, repaired, restored. It hangs in the Foundation's office with a placard. This dress was worn by someone trying to steal another woman's life. Now it reminds us that no one can wear your life but you. Young women take photos with it. Survivors touch it like it's a talisman. It's become a symbol of attempted theft and successful recovery. Camilla wanted to wear my life. Now my life is something she could never have achieved, not because I'm special, but because I'm real. She was always performing, always pretending, always trying to be someone else. I was just trying to be myself. That's the ultimate revenge, being yourself so fully that no one else could ever successfully pretend to be you. If this story helped you, if it made you think, if it made you get tested for drugs you didn't know you were taking, share it. subscribe. Tell someone who needs to hear it. Because somewhere right now, someone is drugging someone they claim to love. And somewhere else, that victim is starting to realize something's wrong. The wedding march isn't always a celebration. Sometimes it's a funeral march for the life someone's trying to steal. But you can stop the music. You can change the ending. You can turn your wedding disaster into your greatest victory. I did. And I'm nobody special, just a woman who refused to disappear.